So our final article for the day, and then we'll jump into our interview with Don. So this article is titled "Irish Scientists Develop UV Drone to Battle Coronavirus Spread." So obviously coronavirus has been in the news a lot. We've talked about kind of its impact on the UAS industry a number of times. We've talked about drones being used to sterilize large venues, stadiums, something like that, trying to rid them of the coronavirus. But it previously had been by spraying some sort of antibacterial, and this is actually using UV rays. Mike and I are based in New York City. The MTA, the New York City subway system, the first time they've ever shut down.
First time they ever cleaned the cars.
Yeah, they shut it down for 3 hours and clean them.
I don't think it's just New York.
First time it's ever happened, but they've been experiencing with powerful UV lights, putting them in there and kind of quickly flashing these train cars on the inside of these train cars to rid the virus. So this is another exciting kind of innovation, another step forward in the industry. Hopefully, another step to getting the country back to a new normal, but. This is kind of for anybody that wants to jump in, but what are some of your guys' thoughts on this initiative, on the efficacy and the kind of effectiveness of using UV to combat something like the coronavirus?
Well, I can't speak to how efficient UV light is on, I'm not a scientist in that respect. But on the other hand, again, back to the kind of what you can do right now. So with spraying the disinfectant, we had a problem in that's actually doable right now indoors. However, regulations are different outdoors and indoors. And part of the problem with regulations for outdoor applications is that if you're spraying something, you have two issues. You got are you flying legally? And as soon as you start spraying some kind of chemical, that kicks off a whole nother set of regulations that you have to meet. So I wonder if eliminating that aspect of it actually makes this more practical and usable right now for outdoor applications.
Yeah.
Well, I guess the comparison has. You want to go, Don?
Mike. Nope.
Yeah. So the UV stuff is new, so it's gonna take some time before we have some actual data on how well that works. I mean, clearly there was enough data for the MTA to make that investment where they felt comfortable testing it at a larger scale. Mm-hmm. But this is something to just watch out for in general science, because if we could clean things with flashes of light from bacteria and viruses, that's a great step forward for society. And I think it'll be one of the kind of underrated things of this whole epidemic that we'll just take for granted in future generations if it does work out. And this kind of just calls to mind for me that this is a scientific industry. I think in the early stages, we thought of it as pure tech, and that gets into kind of software language, which doesn't take into account physical limitations as well. But I think we're starting to see kind of real innovation down on this nuanced level that shows how many real thinkers are applying their knowledge in this industry now.
Mm-hmm. Globally too, right? I mean, these are Irish scientists who created this. So, Don, did you want to add anything?
No, I'm not a scientist either, but I'm a nerd and I love learning. And one thing that resonated with me that I'd want to share with the group, if the audience, if they haven't read this article, I encourage them to read it. I didn't appreciate that light can disperse further when it comes from a height, because what you've seen up until now are the kind of ground-based robots with the UV light. I've seen articles on those. In fact, I think Miriam might have even written on that at one point. But to be able to do it from a height and get disperse from a larger to clean a larger area, that's significant. And so, this is just another great example of, I think, how drones are being used for, to battle the pandemic. And I think, again, that it's a positive for public perception.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's yet another example too of where you can't have somebody walking every single seat in a stadium carrying a little UV light to flash.
Right.
That's just not going to work. It's a job that can only really be done effectively with a drone.
And also not by a ground robot either, because no stadium is uniform. So this truly would be a use case that is drone specific. And I think that's one of the issues we always kind of run into is sometimes we'll have a great use case, but it's like, well, we could do that from the ground and it's cheaper and it's easier and I understand it. And there's no regulation. So all those factors kind of lead in to making this a great use case, and hope to see the data months from now.
Right. And then I guess just back to the argument of UV versus spraying some sort of antibacterial solution, I would guess that a UV light is lighter than gallons of solution. So, a drone may be able to more effectively administer that.
Less environmental impact too.
Also, yeah, absolutely. So, well, great, guys. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back to ask Don Zoldi a few questions.